Welcome to the All About You podcast. My name is Sheila and I am your host. In this podcast, I invite people to tell their stories of their travels, hobbies, and passions. These podcasts are also now available on my All About You YouTube channel. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story. I just wanted to say this podcast was recorded in Jimmy's shop, so there is some noise from the street, but hopefully it's not going to cause a problem. Welcome to the All About You podcast, and my guest today is Jimmy, and he's the owner of a vintage shop in Valencia. Jimmy, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for being here.
Jimmy, I visited your shop in the summer in the city in here in Valencia and discovered that you are originally from the United States, but running a vintage shop here in Valencia. And I knew there had to be a story there. So here we are in your shop doing the podcast. So let's tell your story. So Jimmy, you're originally from the US. Which part of the US?
I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, I'm from a small city right outside of Atlanta. I lived here about 4.5 years.
Okay, so what brought you to Valencia then?
I met my wife in 2001, and 2002 I believe was my first time in Valencia, and I just fell in love with the city. It's just beautiful. I like the atmosphere. I like the people. I like living in the city. It's just a wonderful place, so I've wanted to live here ever since I've known her.
So we are sitting in your vintage shop.
Mm-hmm.
How did this come about?
Well, in the United States I'm a photographer, and that's my trade. But when I moved here, I knew I was going to have to find some other business to open. I was really uncertain about the photography industry in general right now, and especially I don't know anything about it in Spain or anywhere in Europe. So I thought I would find another business to open. So when I landed, I started looking around. I started put the fillers out to see, where I could fit, what would be a good place, and I looked at everything from massage to real estate. And then one time I was in Idealista and I saw this business for sale. Two friends had gone in business together, a British girl and a Valencian guy. And within a few months they had some breakup. I don't know what happened, but he left, and he was the business person and she was the creative one. And so she had no interest in continuing the business. So I contacted her and I met her, and it just felt like it could be a good fit for me. And so that's how my days in vintage began.
Have you been interested in vintage clothing or memorabilia yourself?
Well, previously, not really. No, I mean, many times I've gone to vintage shops, and I always liked them, and I've always enjoyed my stores is more eclectic, and I've always enjoyed that kind of store. So, but I never actually considered going into any retail clothing at all.
Right, so it's a completely new venture for you.
Yeah, completely new. I knew absolutely nothing about it and I especially, when I was 50 or whatever when I started, and so you have to figure out what 20-year-olds want and 25-year-olds want, and and plus I'm in Europe as opposed to the United States, so it was a big learning curve for me.
So one question I wanted to ask you, Jimmy, what do we class as vintage?
Well, technically anything that's 20 years or older is vintage, and I believe it's anything over 80 years is antique. But generally 20 years and older. That's why mine is vintage and retro, because maybe I have something that's 10 or 11 years old, or even 7 or 8 years old, but it's cool and it fits with our vibe of the store, so I sell it as well.
I always think with fashion, you should never actually throw anything out, because it will come back at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think we've all had the instances where, oh my God, this is the in thing now. Right. I mean, like, for example, ponchos. Quite a few years ago, ponchos are the in thing.
Right.
I remember as a child having these knitted ponchos in all these different colours, and you think, right, wow, if I'd hung on to those cheesecloth shirts,
Right.
all the retro T-shirts they always seem to be in with all the bands and everything.
Right.
How do you source the stuff for your shop?
Well, that's the cool part about this business, and that I didn't know when I started, but it's so interesting. There's about 12 different ways. But number one, people come in my store and they say, hey, I have this old leather jacket, or this is my grandmother's, or something like that. So I get things all the time that way. The generic answer is there are companies that cater to businesses like mine, and they have huge warehouses all throughout. You can order online. You can write and say, I need 20 pair of Levi's and, jeans, and order that way. There are actually now a few in Valencia, and I can actually go there and I just get to walk through, sort out what I want, and say I'm looking for hoodies for men, or so it's really cool to how to the clothes, because it sounds kind of funny, but they have a history. Like these clothes are coming from somewhere, and then when I get them, here I'm in Valencia, Spain. Well, a lot of times I see that the clothes are from somewhere in the UK. They're from Germany. They're from France, and you can see it by the tags or whatever. And then a girl from a Dutch girl buys them, so now they're in the Netherlands. So it's pretty cool to me how they kind of like have their own little life.
How does it work then? People come in and ask, have you got a particular thing, or people come in and browse? And
people do that a lot. People come in and ask, well, do you have this? Do you have that? But generally they just come in and browse. 90% of people are just looking just to see. I mean, the kind of people that shop at these stores, the people who actually shop, there are people who just walk through because it looks cool and they're like, oh, let's check it out. And they just look in and leave. And if they happen to see something that catches their eye, they grab it. But some people come in. I love these people. They come in and they literally look through every item, and and they're really searching and asking questions about this. They'll go try things on. Maybe they're here for an hour. I like that kind of customer. Even if they don't buy, they've actually got the experience.
I think one thing though, we're very much, unfortunately, into the fast fashion. Buy something cheaply, wear it a couple of times, and then get rid of it. If we look back on particularly clothing that was made, as you say, over the last 80 odd years, the quality is often incredible.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
And I guess that's why this clothing survives and is still around, because of the quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's because I had bought a cheap shirt one day somewhere to go to the beach, and the first time I started to put it on, I took the tag out and the shirt ripped, just pulling the tag out. And these shirts have been, I have shirts that are here that are 20, 25 years, 15, 20, 25, 30 years old, and they're still fine. So it's definitely better quality now. I have a dress. I have an American woman that's retired in Valencia that brought me, and it was her grandmother's dress. But it was a flapper dress. This lady grew up in New York City, her grandmother. Anyway, so she's an African-American woman, which makes it cooler somehow. Because, to picture this African-American woman in this flapper dress, the ones that
sway. With all the beads.
Yeah. It survives. And it's, it's been worn tons of times. It's just been bagged up for 100 years almost. And anyway, so those sorts of things, they're just cool stories.
But this is it. It's the stories that go with the item of clothing, isn't it? That's what makes it fascinating.
I think, yeah. And that's just something that shocked me. I had no idea that I would ever be into that at all. But, yeah, I really enjoy it. And also enjoy just, it's a mom and a daughter, and they come in, they're here from Holland, and they're having a nice weekend, and they're shopping, and I get to be kind of a part of that, which is cool. And they come in, they have some good music, they look around, they see, maybe they're like, well, I would never wear this corset, but it's still cool to look at, and they just look around, maybe they find a cute shirt or something. So I think that's kind of fun.
So Jimmy, is there an average customer? What sort of age group are coming into the shop?
I have a few different levels of customers. I have some teenagers that come in that are kind of a goth, emo is what it's called now, and they buy these little chokers, and they buy little garter belts, and they like everything oversized and dark. People don't care anything about vintage. They just want these particular clothes that I happen to carry just specifically for them because they come. So I wanted to find something to sell them. So I started sourcing that. And I even make little chokers now. Anyway, so I've got those. And then I've got people that are Erasmus and college age students. They come through and they're big clients. But I would say the average age for probably paying customers is probably like 22 to 40, probably 22 to 35-ish, it just depends. But, people, a lot of people, they come in, they're just into this kind of clothes. They want something nice. Maybe you want some Levi's jeans, because Levi's are expensive here, like €100 or something. And you can buy them from me for 20. So people do that sort of thing. But it's really weird because there's not a real good average. It's like sometimes in the summer I'll have guys my age that are just outside and they're sweaty and they want to put on a fresh shirt and they come in and buy. So it's like it's really not boring. Yeah.
So when you came to Valencia, then you really didn't have any idea what you would end up doing?
No.
So now you're sitting here in your vintage shop. Can you believe you're doing this? I mean, is it sort of a pinch me moment?
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes, it kind of shocks me. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm into this. I think I'm one of those people that's probably not smart, by the way, to do this, but I really don't mind taking the risk. And I feel like it's a calculated risk. It's not like I said, let's start a butter making company and I have to, to learn how to handle all of this. I mean, this is, I'm dealing with tourists, probably 80% of my customers, 75% are tourists. And so, when you're on holiday or you're having a good time, something that you would never buy at home, maybe you will buy while you're out, or if you spend $25 on a shirt, it's not really a big deal. But if you're at home, you would say, I'm not spending $25 on this shirt. So I feel like it's more of a certain thing, So yeah, it's shocking to me, but I like it.
So do you spend much time sort of researching, what's the latest thing that, people are after, or the history on certain clothing? Do you spend much time doing that? Because I should imagine that's quite an interesting to look into.
Yeah, and it's really complicated to research, but I try to keep. And I'm not a fashionable person, by the way. Obviously, I have on a gray t-shirt and jeans. I watch what people are wearing. I follow tons of things online, and you can kind of just see. You can see what's coming. You can see what people are into. Like last summer, everybody came in and were buying Levi's shorts. I mean, it was crazy. I couldn't keep Levi's shorts. But this summer, I hardly sold any Levi's shorts. So it was like a little trendy thing. Now, people still did buy them. But obviously jean shorts were in. Jean jackets were really in. Because I was open 1 year before COVID. I was closed for 1 year during COVID. And then I've been open for about a year and a half. Anyway, so people were wearing them, and now it's not as popular. So this kind of thing, and right now a big thing, or last winter, I hope this winter as well, like flannel shirts are really big, and these like Indian print, like these tribal Indian style prints.
Right, yeah,
are really big. So yeah, you do have to keep your eye out for what's hot.
I just think looking around your shop, we've got clothing, we've got memorabilia, we've got sort of accessories as well. Whenever I've gone to vintage shops, it's because I'm going to a theme party. In England, we have a thing every year called the Goodwood Revival meeting, and you can go along dressed in clothes from sort of the 40s. And the lengths some people will go to. I mean, they've got the hair, they've got the makeup, the shoes, the jewellery. So particularly for women, they are sourcing all this stuff all the time.
Oh, wow.
And, they'll go for 3 or 4 days, and every day it's a different outfit. So I think vintage shop, they are just a little sort of haven of interesting things.
Yeah.
For the general public, as well as people looking for particular outfits for a party or for an event.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's very, very popular now with everyone pretty much to reuse, recycle. And it's a huge thing. I mean, I don't push it because I feel like it's not why I'm in business to make money, and so I don't want to pretend like I'm in business to save the earth. But I do want to save the earth, and I'm very glad that how we're doing it, because honestly, the landfills really are full of clothes that we could be reusing for sure. And so I feel a little fake if I'm like pushing that too much. But in reality, a lot of people come just for that reason, especially people in their 20s. It's a big thing for them. Yeah. So, yeah.
With vintage as well, and it was, when I asked you what do we class as vintage, when we look back at stuff that was popular in the 70s or the 80s, I just think, oh, so that's now classed as vintage, is it?
Isn't
and I grew
funny?
up wearing the exact same thing, loved it at the time. Would I go back to wearing that now, some sort of 50 years later? Probably not.
Right.
But it's interesting, this difference between what is vintage and sort of what is antique.
And what's popular. I mean, this will make you feel old, but vintage is anything from like 2000. Kids come in to me and they're like, and they talk about the 90s like it was 100 years ago. They're like, oh, that's very 90s. They tell me all the time. I'm like, that's so 90s. And I'm like, because in my mind, if something's older is maybe 50s, or obviously 40s, but 50s, 60s. When I was in school, I would have thought vintage definitely 50s and 60s, because I was in the school in the 80s. So yeah, it's very funny, and I think it's just an evolving thing. But I think I don't know if you've noticed, but it's gotten so popular that all the big stores they sell vintage, what they call vintage. They print things that look vintage. You'll see it'll say vintage since blah blah, and anyway, and then they have old like concert shirts are a huge thing now, that and they look like real vintage, but it's not. So
yeah, I think sort of the tour T-shirts has always been a popular thing, hasn't it? And I think it's a bit like you belong to this tribe, the Black
Right.
Sabbath. With vintage, though, to me, it's about the quality. And you go into a vintage shop and you sort of look around, and I think if you know a little bit about labels, and you think, all right, yeah, I've heard of this brand, particularly with clothing and accessories, that type of thing, you can find some real treasures.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard,
sure.
you find something, you think, okay, let's not get too excited, because there's a lot of fakes out there. Let's look at the quality, the stitching, the quality of the leather or of the fabric, that type of thing.
Yeah.
If you could source one thing that would just open your heart, what would it be, Jimmy? What's the one thing that you would like to get your hands on?
Oh my God, that's hard. Probably vintage trench coats. Maybe God, that's hard. Some old, even though it probably wouldn't sell here, but I just think it would be great with like old suits, like men's suits, like pinstripe. Maybe. I don't know. I've never really thought about it, but there's just so much stuff I want.
I think the vintage trench coats, because that's sort of one of the classic things,
yeah, it's
isn't
classic,
it?
Yeah. Everyone asks for them.
Exactly, and if you're looking at Aquascutum, if you're looking at Burberry, absolutely home in on those. So if you do get any of those, you've got my number, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, Burberry is huge, and I don't care, but there are stores and there's people online that all they specialize in is certain brand like Burberry and Ralph Lauren and things like that, big name things, and I could do it too. I'd probably do better, but I like to have an eclectic mix, so it's interesting.
We are coming up to Halloween now, Jimmy. Have you got lots of people coming in and they've got their idea of a costume, but they need to source a XYZ? Have you got a lot of Halloween people coming in?
Yeah, for sure. Last year it was crazy. So many people come. This year, I feel like they started coming a little earlier. But this year, this whole week, just every day, people are, they're writing, they're calling. Do you have this? Do you have that? Come in, and it's so funny that people have very specific ideas. Like I have a jacket and a shirt set up over there, and it looks like Prince. And because last year people were like, just because people look for specific things. So anything that I've, like the past month, anything I've been shopping, anytime I see anything that just makes me think, oh, that's perfect for Halloween, I've grabbed. And so far it's doing great because people are coming in and shopping. And it's a lot of fun. It's fun to see what people are going to do and see people's ideas and lots of cowboy stuff,
I think it's absolutely fascinating what you're doing, because it's a completely different interest to your photography business back in the States.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know who's going to walk in the door with something or looking for something.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the research as well you're doing for vintage items.
Yeah, it's. I'm just totally learning. I mean, I'm still very new at this business, so you know, I'm constantly. I try to make friends with all the other shops, which isn't a big thing here in Spain. I feel like I don't know about this, but I feel like, you know, people are always wary of you to. But in photography, always like you need to make friends with the other photographers. Like, so if I have a wedding and then I get sick, I can call someone. You know, like it's just better for everything, you know, to be nice and have friends in your business. So I try to do that here, and so I learn from all these other people, and you know, everybody has their opinions, everybody has their ways. So yeah, it's fun.
I think it's brilliant you're here, and when we finish this, I shall be having a look around and see if I can find those hidden gems. Oh yeah. So Jimmy, thank you so much for taking us into the world of vintage.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you could come. It's
Absolutely,
a great place.
Love it, and good luck with the future of your business.
I don't know if I told the name of the business is Trinity Vintage on Calle Cuba 22. So yeah, we're open every day except for Sunday.
And we'll put the photographs, we'll put links to all your social media channels, and wish you good luck with the business, Jimmy.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe on whatever platform you are using. It is free, and if you would like to tell your story, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story.